Hello, Julie. We made it through the full moon.
We
Uh,
did.
the Mercury Cazimi square, Uranus,
Right.
all the dramas. We're on
I
the
would
other side.
I would like to point out that the world didn't blow up.
Yay!
Nobody needed to hide under the bed.
Nobody got assassinated, you know,
I
at
don't think so.
this point we know yet. Okay, so we both thought it would be a good idea to do a little debrief or decompress after that full moon. And it did bring, I have to say, it was pretty intense
Yeah,
energetically. It felt like
me too.
waves of some cosmic force rippling
Yeah, I
through.
think it was pretty intense in terms of individuals
Mhm.
experiencing it. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And a lot of my intensity was, well, like just energetic. Nothing really happened per se, but it was a lot of energy trying to move through. And then listening to my clients, there was there was a lot of energy around full moon, Mercury retrograde Cazimi. So there's a lot of revelations, I would say, that I was witnessing in other people.
I could say I was too.
Yeah, a lot of
Mhm.
reveals that happened.
Mhm.
Yeah, for better
Mhm.
or worse.
I think it is interesting to consider the Democratic National Convention on the day of the full moon because there was nothing untoward that happened. They just did what they were doing and they were like spreading their good, their happy days everywhere. But I think what's really interesting is it's a real turnaround of energy, right?
Mhm.
It was very Uranian. Nobody expected it
Right.
in a sense. And even if they plotted it a little bit, even if it was orchestrated to some extent, it was orchestrated based on changing events that they couldn't necessarily predict,
Right.
right? Or control. And so I think there was an upset in the apple cart. It just was an upset that a lot of people are relieved to have happen.
Because
But it was a shift in
happened, yeah.
consciousness. Yeah.
Because Uranus, which is what you're talking about, which is the shift, the change, the sort of expect the unexpected. We don't know where things are going.
Right.
It is often, not met with joy. We talked about that in the last one, but this
Right.
one seemed to be like you said, like it was like, oh, okay, we can go with this. We'll go with this.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. We'll roll with it and see what happens. And we'll have a lot of security at the gate.
Yeah,
I
and
mean, there was a horrible attack in Germany. Like there are terrible things that have gone on this week. But um just in terms of that being such a focal point. Yeah,
yes, yeah, yeah. Of course, there's always terrible things, and
yeah.
but like, predominantly those are the things that sort of showed up. And like of all the people, my sister had the best. She's like, I don't know what's happening. This is the best. I was just like, you're the exception.
Wonderful.
But the full
Wonderful.
moon's in her 10th and 11th house, so yeah.
Uh-huh. Did you look at what, does she have any planets there or anything?
Yeah, yeah, she does. And so it was she was working in a commercial, so her 10th house, and she was kind of being treated like a queen, Leo.
Nice.
And she was just like, oh, and Venus is there. And she said she just felt like it was a love fest. It went so well.
I love it.
And I
I
was
love it.
like to hear good
Mhm.
news. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was fun. Uh,
Mhm.
okay. So one of the questions I did have for you, so we made it through that. That was awesome because it was kind of predicted to be kind of the most difficult 2 weeks of the year. That's what I,
There was tons of stuff on the internet that made people really frightened, and I hate
yeah,
that.
yeah. Fear mongering somehow works.
Of course it works. The amygdala just eats it.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask you today is about um, a T-square and the meaning of a T-square, because I am standing with everybody else with the Jupiter Saturn square, which I think is with us for a good long time.
The last Jupiter, so Jupiter and Saturn conjuncted each other
Yeah.
on the solstice in 20, I never get it right. I think it was either the solstice of 2020 or 2019, but anyway, December.
Yeah. Yeah.
Saturn went into Aquarius, Jupiter went into Aquarius, and bang, they conjuncted each other. So that's the beginning of the dance, right? It always starts with everything starts with a conjunction. It's sort of like the egg meets sperm thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, that was the solstice of December 2020. So conjunction, right? And if you remember back, everybody was talking about, the fact that this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is it's a big indication of the next 20 years.
Yes.
The fact that that conjunction was at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and we're heading to the age of Aquarius, and Pluto was heading to the 0 degree of Aquarius.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was a lot of astrological noise around it, which rightly so. And so for me, what I thought was that Jupiter Saturn conjunction was kicking off a 20-year journey. And then that's also sort of aligned with Pluto in Aquarius for 20 years.
Right.
Roughly the same time frame. And that would be our sort of chaos barometer, kicking, screaming into the age of Aquarius, right? And struggling about what to do with AI and, climate change and all the struggles and political, like, is it going to go left, right? Like, what's the deal? So that was the beginning. That was the insemination, or that was the seed of, that was the first sprout. So this is called the waxing square. So Saturn's in Pisces and Jupiter's in Gemini. And so this is opening up the issues.
First quarter.
Right. And
First
yeah.
quarter, yeah.
So
if it was like a not a soccer game or something that has 4 quarters in it, this would be the end of the first quarter.
that's right.
Yeah.
And that really tension ratchets up. First quarter is like, oh wow, we better get this right, right?
That's the stage.
Yeah. And so it's meaningful, but it's more, if you're going to really want to understand it in terms of world events, I guess you would go and look back what was happening in December of 2020, right? So we were already into the pandemic, right? But it was a lot of things.
That was almost
so
yeah.
Yeah, right. So so then you have this square in a Gemini and Pisces, and so you're asking me about a T-cross,
right? But we can
'Cause
start the square in Pisces and
well, let's go back to the full moon. The full moon was the sun opposite the moon with Uranus squaring it in a T, right? The sun and Mercury opposite the moon and Uranus squaring it. So it creates a T. Well, it's an upside down T. It creates a T, right? And so that's why it's called a T cross. It's 2 squares and an opposition.
Right.
And it's very tense because everything's pulling. So when you have a T cross, just a little like educational astrological thing. When you have a T cross, you have planets in the same modality. So at the full moon, they were all fixed.
Yeah.
And so all the fixed signs showed up. Well, 3 of the fixed signs showed up. Scorpio was missing. And so when the 3 fixed signs show up, it's like there's stubbornness, there's resistance, and then but Uranus's job always is to bring chaos or whatever. So yeah, so there was an upset in the way people thought things were going to go. And some of the upsets on the planet were more distressing. But I think this is something that's really hard for people to grasp, but it's very important about astrology. Astrology does not make reality happen. Astrology reflects reality as it's happening.
Yes, that's important.
So everybody's predicting what's going to happen, like in the election, or what's going to happen about things. And it's much more useful to understand that it's a seamless web. It's a connection that has no, it's not us and them up there. It's a perfect image. It's a perfect reflection. Right. So you look at the astrology and it helps you understand what you're experiencing.
Right. Yes.
Rather than use it as, I mean, predictions do happen and they are good, but you know, when it comes, let's say, to predicting a racehorse or an election, some people get it, some people don't,
Right. Yeah.
right? So why bother? Anyway, so if we do an AMA for the election, it's not gonna be about prediction.
Okay. Well, we are planning, just to let everyone know, that we are planning an AMA, Ask Me Anything About the Election, where Julie's going to give us what she sees in the charts, probably of the candidates of the day of the election.
Yeah, a lot of interesting stuff there.
Go through some of the details to look at
Mhm.
the factors at play, the forces that are pushing everything and reflecting
Mhm.
to us. So not a
Mhm.
predictive of who's going to win, although you did predict Trump in 2016.
I did. I couldn't help it. It was so blatant, but
Right.
I
More
uh,
importantly, it's like how to navigate this. What are the forces at play? Look at the
yeah, right.
Mhm.
So then we were talking about Jupiter and Saturn.
Right.
So the Jupiter-Saturn square, which was on the 18th, was exact. So that's the first square. And then through throughout the year, there'll be a second square. So they were like ships passing in the night. Saturn going retrograde, Jupiter going direct, right? So then Jupiter will go retrograde and there'll be another square which will happen at the end on the 24th of December, just in time for Christmas.
Great.
Right? And then the last one, which is interesting, is in June, in mid-June, Jupiter square Saturn on the 15th of June. And that one happens in the very early degrees of Aries and Cancer, which is a different sign than the first square started. So it's carrying us, the way I see it is it's carrying us toward the change that Neptune in Aries is going to bring on March 30th.
2020.
Right? It's like there's a big shift coming, which we desperately need. Which you can see when Neptune goes into Aries. Neptune's been in Pisces, it'll have been there for 15 years, goes into Aries, it'll go back into Pisces, but not much, and then it'll go back into Aries. So this is like, you know, the revolution is coming, everybody. Change is
It is.
coming. So one way or another. But you know, that feeling, I think we talked about this, that feeling that we're kind of caught in an undertow and we can't really get momentum.
Yes.
Neptune in Aries suggests that there might be some momentum. But you also have a lot of other things crossing that line. And then you have the last Saturn Jupiter square at I guess it's at 1 degree. So it's very close to zero, right at the beginning of the Cancer, of the Aries, of Neptune and Aries.
Okay.
So yeah, so we'll have Jupiter square Saturn, and then we'll have Saturn conjunct, well, actually Saturn won't conjunct Neptune, but it'd be very close. And then we'll have Jupiter square Neptune. So anyway, it's a long story, but
Yeah.
it's an interesting story. So I think that Jupiter in Gemini is in its detriment because Jupiter rules the opposite sign, Sag.
Yes.
Saturn in Cancer, no, Saturn in Pisces is not, it doesn't have a dignified or a lack of dignity there. It's just Saturn in Pisces.
Right.
But Jupiter in Gemini is overextended. Everything is like there's a million. If it's a good idea, there's 10 good ideas, or 20 or 10,000 or 10,000. So there's a kind of frothiness in terms of possibility.
Yes.
And Saturn in Pisces is about, suffering, and Pisces is about compassion, and Pisces is about the need to, in a sense, to feel our feelings. And Saturn always has this quality to it, like ignore this at your own peril,
Right.
right? So Jupiter's coming along and dealing out millions of cards, and Saturn's saying, yeah, well, there's consequences to every card that you're dealt.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah, I think that's the square. So, it's harsh in a way, but it's totally reasonable that we have to do that. So if you get Jupiter, as in your case, I think opposite Mercury
Yeah.
or opposite Sag.
Yeah, my Mercury's in
Yeah.
Sag, so they're opposing each other, which is exactly what you just described. Too many
Right.
ideas.
Right. Too many good things. Could be too many good things. It doesn't have to be bad things.
Yeah.
Right. So you get them opposite each other, and they're like, so oppositions are kind of polarities trying to resolve, right? And opposition is like you and me, and maybe we agree, maybe we don't agree, but it's a polarity, right? Sag and Gemini have a lot in common. And you should be aware, you personally should be aware that your Mercury is in Jupiter's sign, and
Yes.
and transiting Jupiter is in Mercury's sign.
Right. So it's a mutual reception.
That's right. So there's a tremendous amount, and anybody who's got Jupiter opposite something in Sag right now is having that. Well, maybe not. If it's not Mercury, I guess it's not a mutual reception, but still there's that oppositional thing. So you have to decide when there's an opposition, if it's an argument, or if you're going to try and bring the duet, like if you can live with paradox, or if you can't.
Right.
But the square, especially from Saturn, is about consequences.
Right.
It's about consequences. And the biggest consequence is the one that if you don't feel the truth of what's happening. So in the world, I think it's the suffering of people is so extreme, and people are trying so hard to find whatever their version of a solution is. Some you agree with, some you don't, but still. But the real need is to be with is to have compassion, to feel with, like we would come up with better results if we took a minute to feel how we feel about things.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. How we feel about things.
Yeah.
Because
So go ahead.
Jupiter in Gemini is definitely not like a feeling kind of thing. It's like a windstorm. There's
It's
so
like,
many pieces of paper blowing around, and
that's
so
right. Let's have a party.
ticker tape, like, phew,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of noise and news and information flying around, and there doesn't feel, this is my own experience right now, there doesn't feel to be like a solid weight, and so Saturn could be actually very helpful.
I think a square is very helpful, because Saturn is especially in this case, Jupiter needs to be grounded.
Yes. Yeah.
But the way to ground it is to feel.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's in Pisces, which is a deeply.
Yeah, so you might end up feeling the impossibility of grounding it.
Well, they are all mutable signs.
They are, and mutable signs are shapeshifters, right? Mutable energy is the last, like now it's Virgo, the sun's in Virgo. Everybody thinks Virgo's the fall, Virgo's the end of summer. Gemini is the end of spring, right? And Pisces is the end of winter. So they're all signs that are transforming from one season to the next.
Right.
And so they're shape-shifting signs.
Right. So one day they're spring, one day they're winter, one day they're,
right.
back and forth. They're this and they're that. So
right.
Yeah.
So everybody's getting their back to school thing happening in their, mind, but wanting to catch the last days of summer.
Exactly. That's a very good analogy for what a mutable sign is. What we're going now. So like with the T-square and the power signs, like the full moon that you were describing, they were all in the fixed signs, which are usually power plays and standoffs and stubborn energies. And that's one type of T-square. And we're talking, and in this instance, about a T-square that's in mutable signs, which is not a standoff. It's about trying to find I guess like, because what I was feeling is I was like, okay, good, now I have Jupiter and Saturn coming for me. So it's like, I feel like
Yeah, they're coming for me too. I think the most important thing for individuals, for those of us who are just regular people down here, is to hold on to your sanity. There's nothing more important than your mental health.
well, it just so happens that I'm teaching a workshop in that. So
I love that.
to practice what I preach in September, doing qigong and meditation and yoga nidra and things to help relax the energies. And
Yeah, and you're the queen as far as I'm concerned of nervous system issues and calming the nervous system. And Gemini, certainly Virgo, Gemini, all that stuff is all about the nervous system. The mutable signs are all about the nervous system, which brings us to the fact that as the sun moves through Virgo, it's going to make a T-cross with the sun is going to square Jupiter and oppose Saturn.
when is that?
The sun will oppose Saturn and square Jupiter between September 8th and 12th. So you could start that on the 7th and you could prolong it until the 13th.
Okay.
Yeah, from the 7th to the 13th.
That's actually in between the new moon, which is September 2nd, and the full moon, which would be 2 weeks later. So it's literally that T square is happening in between the new moon and the full moon.
Yeah. And the new moon is at 11 degrees of Virgo. It's close enough to so this makes me remember all the astrological kerfuffle around the Venus star point on June 4th. Right? The sun conjuncted the Venus direct, not retrograde, conjunct the sun in Gemini. And I don't usually go on about the Venus star point, but this year I did because it was at 14 degrees of Gemini, which is exactly where Jupiter and Saturn are moving along in this year. So I felt that that Venus star point was very important. And, there's a rail strike. I felt that would be all about the Gemini has a lot to do with the marketplace and the movement of things, like the getting things from here to there. And Venus is stuff. Venus is actually merchandise too. So I felt like it was going to be about supply chain issues. Right. So here we have the Jupiter Saturn square activating the Venus star point, and we've got this rail strike looming that could really, that's really it could devastate a whole lot of us. Yeah. So delivering things, and they blow up a ship here and there, and then those goods are gone. I think overall the theme of Jupiter and Saturn squaring each other, certainly while it's in Gemini, and as long as it's hooking onto that Venus star point, is about the transporting of goods, but it's also about the way that we communicate with each other about the things that we want to have happen. Like, so if you're promoting your business, or maybe you should tell people where they could find your workshop.
Right. Oh, yes, I will leave a link down below.
Okay, good. Right. Yeah, so I think that the information highway is as important as the stuff highway.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It seems to be more and more becoming that the online world seems to be becoming more and more the place where things happen, because I was talking to somebody about storage the other day. Like before, it used to be like you have to pay for like a real storage place, but now you have to pay for like storage on the cloud and storage this, very Aquarian sort of like storehouse of information.
That is very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And people break in and steal things in the virtual world quite a bit.
Yeah, it's quite interesting how that works.
Mhm.
But that's a really interesting point, Julie, about the delivery of goods. And is that something that we should look out for during this Virgo season in
Well,
all?
it's something we might pay attention to if we're, if you're a kind of astrologer who wants to connect it to world events. I mean, I thought that was interesting in terms of Jupiter and Saturn,
Yeah.
and Venus star point. And just to see how, so this is starting up with at the end, second half of Mercury retrograde, will it be impossible to resolve? Will they resolve it and make it not happen? It's just interesting to watch.
Right.
I think for those of us who are listening to this and talking about this, though, the main thing is for us to be careful about our mental health.
Mhm. Yes.
And of course, there is no mental health if there isn't emotional health to go with it. So,
Right.
yeah.
So, yeah. So that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Mhm.
I remember you
Mhm.
saying that the mutable signs can struggle with staying grounded and staying.
Anxiety, all that stuff, because that's the shape-shifting, that's the plight of shapeshifters everywhere. It's like if you're constantly turning from one thing into another,
Right.
there's, like,
Yeah. Where do you land? Exactly.
and where do you land? You land in the dantian. You land right where Qigong takes you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, okay. Well, that's a broad stroke over the next few weeks.
Mhm.
And then that will lead us into the eclipse season, which will lead
Right.
us
So the new moon kind of hooks the Jupiter Saturn stuff, and
right.
the full moon on September 17th hooks the Neptune energy. It's kind of pretty close to the moon conjunct Neptune and the sun opposition Neptune. And that's giving us a little bit of I think that's giving us a little agitation around probably around pandemic things, that kind of stuff. Because the Neptune and Pisces brought us the pandemic.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So the nodes are going to shift sign in January from Aries. The nodes move backwards. I don't really think we should talk about this too much, but the nodes are going to shift from Aries. The north node is going to go from Aries, where it's been, to Pisces.
Right.
So when the nodes went into Libra and Aries, it was like, those are such combative signs,
Mhm.
right? So now they stay more than a year, and about, I guess, 18 months or something. And so now they're gonna shift on January. It looks like January 12th, they're gonna shift to Pisces
And Virgo.
and Virgo, yeah.
Ooh,
So
okay.
that's gonna be something to talk about coming. But it's nice to give people an idea that astrology is a constantly shape-shifting thing that's happening above, just like human life is, or any life is.
Yeah.
And it can give us context to understand things.
So much, so much. It would
Yeah.
you don't know this morning when I realized that I was having this T square and
Yeah.
that was oh, this all makes so much sense.
Right. So then
And
you have more ability to navigate it.
so much. And then I was like, right, okay, I got this.
Right.
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 So it's almost like knowing and accepting and seeing what is. It's not like, oh no, and now I have to go through this. It's like, oh, this is just a transiting experience that
Yeah.
is hard in these ways, but it doesn't have to derail me.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to uh drive the car for me because now that I know what I'm dealing with, I can activate other parts of myself that I
Yeah. And it's not good to use astrology to make you feel bad.
No, but as I've learned with myself and other humans is we can use anything to make ourselves feel bad.
Right.
So
I really get a lot out of, or I have gotten a lot out of over the past of looking at people like who are really, people I regard who are successful and looking at their transits and charts and understanding it wasn't because everything was easy for them,
mhm,
right? It was because they stayed on the course of their purpose or whatever. I don't know if it's purpose, but they knew who they were, or they learned who they were, or they were committed to learning who they were.
right.
Yeah.
And they used whatever those challenges were to,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
to strengthen that or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's I was very grateful for astrology today when the realization hit me and I felt empowered, actually. Felt
Well, on behalf of the planets and the stars, I'm delighted.
thank you for being your spokesperson and and teaching us
Mhm.
navigate them. Really, very such an important tool that we all have to use. So let's next time we talk around the new moon, uh have a date set for everybody to so that we'll have the information ready for the election. Ask Julie anything. And
Well, you can chime in too. Actually, if it's an ask me anything, we want to hear from people too. So it'd be
right. So if people have questions about their nervous system, about their health, anything to do with that, then we can add that in too. But in relationship to astrology, well, it's actually in relationship to the elections.
well, the title of the AMA will be something about the election and the world issues, right? Not personal issues so much.
Not drink yourself through the election.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
good. So we'll have that set up and then people can start to sign up for that. And in the meantime, they can sign up for your new moon events online.
Yeah, everybody's welcome to the new moons. You just have to send me an email. And if you want to learn astrology with me, you go to Patreon.
Okay.
And if you want to help calm your nervous system, you go to Sarah.
Yes, so we'll put all that information down in the description below. And if you want to support Julie and I, you can hit subscribe and like and if you have questions and you want to let us know how you're doing through this, you can do that as well in the comments. Okay.
Okay.